Good morning, students. So today let us continue with another natural disaster, that is drought. So first let us understand the meaning of drought. So what is drought? A drought is a prolonged period of acute shortage of water which can have serious effects on agriculture and other activities in the affected area. It can lead to scarcity of water, food, fodder, and employment opportunities. So what is drought? A drought is an extended period of time when an area or a region experiences below normal precipitation or below average amount of rainfall or very less or little rainfall. Now it can lead to scarcity of water. So drought can lead to scarcity or shortage of water, scarcity or shortage of food, fodder, that is the food for the animals, and it can also bring some problems related to employment opportunities. So the condition of drought may occur either due to inadequacy of rainfall or the lack of irrigational facilities for meeting the normal crop requirements. So now drought can occur due to inadequate or lack of rainfall or the lack of irrigational facilities. So the irrigational facilities here are the management of water supply that can be used for irrigational purposes for the growing of crops. Now, drought can also occur due to the felling of trees or deforestation, soil erosion, overexploitation of water resources, or the depletion of the water table or the underground water, and global warming. So now let us move on with the droughts conditions in India. Though India receives an average rainfall of around 1200 mm every year, it is not distributed evenly across the country. So here it is given that India receives an average rainfall of around 1200 mm every year. But not all the places receive this amount of rainfall. It is not equally distributed across the country. There are places or states that receive higher amount of rainfall, and there are states or places which receive very less amount of rainfall. Now Cherrapunji in Meghalaya receives over 10,000 mm of rain, which is the highest. The Western Ghats receive 8,500 mm. The Western Ghats here include the states of Goa, Maharashtra, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. Whereas Rajasthan and Gujarat receive very little amount, that is only 200 to 350 mm of rain. So because of the erratic behavior of the rainfall, more than 65 to 70% of roughly 2/3 of the country's arable area is susceptible to drought at one time or the other. So due to this unevenly distribution of rainfall all over the places, more than 65 to 70% or roughly 2/3 of the country's arable area or the area which is favorable for cultivation is susceptible to drought. Now most of the states have both drought as well as high rainfall. For example, in Bihar, districts fall in the rain shadow are under drought. But there are places which receive an adequate amount of rainfall, but still they experiences drought. So now, I hope you have understand. Let us move on with the impact of drought. So drought can have a serious impact in both people, animals, and also the environment. The condition of drought affects us in many different ways. First, agriculture. It leads to the loss of crops. In a country like India, where majority of people depend on agriculture, drought conditions can significantly reduce the agricultural production. This may lead to an increase in prices of the products. As a result, poor people suffer more because they can't afford to buy expensive food articles. So when droughts occur, it affects mostly the farmers because it reduces the production of crops. So in a developing country like India, where a majority of the population depends on agriculture, drought conditions can significantly reduce the agricultural production. So when there is drought, it reduces the agricultural production, which can also lead to an increase in the prices of products. So when there is very low production, the prices of the products also increases. Now, when the prices of the products increases, it is the poor people who suffer. Why? Because they cannot afford to buy these expensive food articles because they do not have sufficient amount of income. Now the second one, children and women. Reduction or loss in crop also leads to a reduction in income, which results in lack of nutritional food for children and women in the affected areas. So when there is a very low production of crops, there is also very low income for the farmers or the people who are engaged in agriculture, which results in the lack of nutritional food for children and women in the affected areas. So when there is low income, people, they cannot afford to buy nutritional food, which is needed especially for the children and the women. Now in rural areas, women are often denied their share of nutritional food, education and health. Now especially in India, in the rural areas, you will find that women, they are often denied of nutritional food, education and health. They have to work for longer hours and earn very little amount of money or income. Now in the drought affected areas, these people, they have to travel far to get water, fodder, that is food for the animals, and fuel wood or firewood. Now the third one, animal husbandry. In rural areas, besides agriculture, people also depend on animal husbandry. The lack of fodder and vegetation cover during drought severely damages the animal population. Now, animal husbandry or livestock or the rearing of animals. Now, in rural areas, besides agriculture, people also depend on animal husbandry or the rearing of cattle or livestock. Now, when there is drought, there is very less production of crops. So there is lack of fodder, that is the food for the animals, which cover drought severely damages the animal population. So when there is lack of food for the animals, it also causes serious damage to the population of the animals they are rearing for livestock. Now the last one, employment. Now loss of agricultural output also leads to reduced employment opportunities for people involved in agriculture. This also leads to the migration of people to other areas. So when there is a drought, the people living in the affected areas, it affected the employment opportunities. For example, the farmers, when there is very less production of crops, when there is no rain, therefore they cannot grow their crops. So there is no work for them to do. So now it is reducing the employment opportunities. Now when there is no work for the people, they have to migrate from one place to another place in order to search for the another job or in order to earn the livelihood. So now let us move on with managing drought. So how to manage a drought? Since drought is a natural phenomenon, it cannot be stopped. Now we all know that drought is a natural disaster. It occurs naturally, so it cannot be stopped. However, effective planning or measures could make it easier to deal with drought and its consequences. The strategy to manage drought includes. So now let us have a look at these measures that needs to be taken by the government and the community in order to manage drought. Close monitoring of the emergency drought scenario as to develop an advanced warning system. So the government needs to warn the local farmers by giving them warning. such as the drought emergency warning systems. These warning systems should be given to the local farmers or the community about the risks of the drought and how to prepare for it. For example, how to conserve water by giving them a public awareness and about weather forecast, etc. Now, immediate relief measures for the affected population and the upkeep of the cattle wealth. Now, relief measures need to be given to the affected population and the upkeep of cattle wealth. Now, we all know that in rural areas, besides agriculture, people also depend on animal husbandry or the rearing of cattle for their livelihood. So when droughts occurs, it affects mostly the crops, but also relief measures should be provided to the cattle to take care of the livestock so as to support the farmers or the people. Making alternative crop strategy for drought-prone areas by growing drought-resistant of crops. Now, this alternative crop strategy or the growing of crops which require less water or less rainfall. Now, in drought-prone areas, these crops such as sorghum, chickpea, groundnuts, millets can be grown, which require less amount of water or rainfall. Additional employment should be generated in the drought-affected areas. Now, additional employment besides agriculture can be generated by the government or the NGOs in the drought-affected areas to support the farmers. Promoting rainwater harvesting using traditional as well as modern methods with the help of local people. Now, rainwater harvesting is watershed management to store the rainwater which can be used for future purposes. It can be for irrigational purposes or for drinking water. So now this rainwater harvesting can be teach to the people, to the local people using modern methods and technologies as to how to conserve rainwater. Now, making adequate arrangements for clean drinking water. So adequate arrangement needs to be made by the government in order to supply clean drinking water to the people. Regenerating and restoring degraded lands. Degraded lands are lands that lose their crop producing ability due to various reasons such as soil pollution, soil erosion, and over-exploitation of land. Now, regenerating and restoring degraded land. So, how to regenerate the degraded land? So, how to restore back the land that has lose its fertility? This can be done by crop rotation, agroforestry, the planting of trees, or by enriching the soil nutrients. Now, some government measures after disaster. So what are the measures that need to be taken by the government or the local community and the NGOs after a disaster? Evacuation or the rescue team. The local population along with the NGOs can work together with the government to form a rescue team, for example, to rescue people after floods or an earthquake. Now, emergency shelter or temporary shelter can be built in by the government along with the local community and the NGOs to give shelter, temporary shelter to the injured people. Search and rescue team can be formed along with the local population and the NGOs to search and rescue the people who have been affected. For example, in places where there is an earthquake or floods. Medical assistance or medical team, provision of short-term food and water, provision of food and drinking water, water purification, providing of pure water which is sufficient for drinking, epidemiological surveillance. This is a collection of data, especially health data, which can help in the implementation or the evaluation of health programs. Now, reopening of roads, provision of temporary lodging, re-establishment of communication networks and contact with remote areas. So when there is an earthquake or floods, there will be damage of communication networks. So these communication networks need to be re-established as soon as possible. The clearance of debris, that is the fallen trees or the fallen or when there is a landslide, they need to be cleared. Disaster assessment, that is the need and assistance that needs to be given to the affected people, and the provision of seeds for replanting. For example, when there is a flood or a drought, the government along with the NGOs can also provide seeds, new seeds to the farmers in the affected areas for replanting. Now you can have a look here at this map of India. Now the one with a very dark color, the places or the states with very dark color are drought-prone districts, and the one with a lighter one are drought-prone states. So let us stop here for today, and we'll continue again in the next session.